Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the Buffalo Novastore webinar on protecting your data from cyber threats and user error. We will go ahead and get started. If you have questions, please put them in the chat window, and we will get to as many as we are able to. My name is David Goodman. I am one of the Buffalo channel account managers here at Buffalo, supporting our partners on specifically the East Coast for myself. I will be presenting along with Gary Thomas, who is our sales engineer, and Nate Forage from Novastore. He is the VP of Strategic Solutions over at Novastore. Quick introductions. Buffalo, for those of you who do not know, we were founded over 45 years ago with our headquarters in Nagoya, Japan. We're publicly traded on the Tokyo Stock Exchange, and our U.S. headquarters is here in Austin, Texas, where Gary and I both reside and work. We've got award-winning support in North America, which is actually in San Antonio, just about an hour south of here. And we build solutions for the SMB market. And we've got dedicated pre-sales and post-sales resources for you to support you either to sell to your customers or to purchase. And our strength is really in the network storage space and in the networking product space. Now I'm going to turn it over to Gary Thomas so he can get technical about our new TerraStation 6000 and some of the solutions it provides.
Good afternoon, everyone. All right, so I just want to talk real quick about the new TerraStation 6000. We've introduced a couple of features here on this device to help, not necessarily help protect against ransomware, but to aid in the recovery in the event of an attack. So specifically what we've introduced is the ability to do snapshots. So first of all, we want to remind everyone that with the Buffalo NAS, you have a very limited attack surface on the NAS itself. Most of the time, if you have a ransomware attack, it's going to come through one of your users attaching to a shared folder, right? So if you take regular snapshots of those, then if you do get hit with a ransomware attack, once you get everything cleaned up, recovery can be hopefully quite simple and quite quick. Just revert back to the snapshot prior to the encryption occurring. It'll help you give you a quick recovery. Snapshots can also assist with quick recovery of day-to-day problems. Somebody deleted a file and you don't want to have to go dig through the backups to try to find it. You can mount the snapshot and grab the file fairly quickly in a few minutes rather than in, a half an hour or an hour to dig through your backups and restore from a backup from a single file. Snapshots can help you get everything back to a specific point in time in case, not just in the case of ransomware, but in the case of a lot of problems. With our snapshot system, you can set it up so that it takes regular snapshots. You can have snapshots as often as once an hour, once every 10 minutes, once a day, and then you can also schedule to determine how many snapshots you want to keep. You may want to keep one hourly snapshot for 24 hours every day. You may want to keep a daily snapshot for a weekly snapshot for a month. However you want to set it up, you can set that schedule up in the interface to take as many or as few snapshots as you feel like you need. Somebody might ask, well, how many snapshots do I need? And there's really no right answer to that. It's all dependent on what your workflow is, how your business is run, how your customers' business is run, how often the data changes. If you have a big data store that's essentially archival data that rarely ever changes, then you probably don't need to snapshot that every few minutes, right? Because nothing ever changes on that. If you have an area where, maybe people are working all the time, things are changing regularly, then you may want snapshots a little bit more often. It really just depends on the use case of a specific file share as to whether how often you need to take a snapshot of that. Now, we have here a quote from our CEO, that Snapshot is the last line of defense. When we're introducing this and going through this with some of our internal people, some people got the impression that this was suddenly going to be a panacea for everything, and it's not, right? It's a supplement to your already existing guards against malware. So this is a pretty complex graphic here. I'm not going to go through all of it, but we all have layers of security. All of our security is layered, or it should be, where you have, your security that's your firewalls that protect you from the outside world, and then internal security, your network, and then different layers of security. The problem is that any one of those layers might have a hole, and occasionally, if things go just wrong, then those holes might line up. Just like, if you put several slices of Swiss cheese on top of one another, they all have different holes, but occasionally you'll have holes in all of them that line right up. And in that case, then we say that Snapshot kind of functions as your last line of defense there. So if the worst does happen, right, you can recover from it fairly quickly and fairly efficiently without having to resort to, paying the ransom, or even worse, having to rebuild all your data from the ground up. And as I've said, we're not here to try to tell you that you'll never get a ransomware attack if you use a Buffalo product. To say that would be, if we could say that and be right about it, we could charge a lot more for our stuff. The fact is, we can't say that. But what we want to do is to help you build a defense mechanism, build a recovery mechanism. Protecting on the front end against ransomware, well, that's, your layers of security, your user training, your network security. What we're doing on the back end, what we want to help you do is to build a better way to recover in the event that you do have an attack. And like all backup vendors, we always recommend what we call a 3-2-1 strategy, where you have at least 3 copies of your data on 2 different types of media, and at least one of those copies being off-site. We always recommend that you have multiple copies of the data, and the bottom line is we have a lot of end users that say, well, I can't afford to have my budget doesn't allow me to include a separate backup solution for my data. And the reality is that if you can't afford to back it up, then you probably can't afford the data in the first place. The question is not how much is the backup going to cost me. The question is, how much does it cost me if I lose my data? And if that price is lower than the cost of a backup, then you're fine. You don't need a backup. But for most people, that's not going to be the case. And now I'd like to hand things over to Nathan with Nova Store, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about what they see as far as from their perspective as far as what's happening as far as ransomware goes. Nathan?
Oh, thanks a lot, Gary. So Gary gave a really good overview on some of the security layers, the security onion, if you want to say, the multiple layers of everything that you need in order to protect and hopefully stand off some of these threats that are coming on. But what we're really seeing in the field is just a huge increase in the amount of ransomware attacks that at least here in Nova Store that our customers are seeing, along with what we're seeing in the field. It's truly crazy compared to, like, say 3 or 4 years ago, where it just wasn't even there. I mean, year over year, ransomware attacks are exponentially rising. The amount of money some of these things are costing is just crazy, and it's not going away. These people that are putting together this ransomware and ransomware for hire type solutions are making tons and tons of money, and you just have to take into consideration and protect against it. One of the biggest threats that we're seeing right now, Gary, if you'd switch to the next slide, is that it's a targeted threat against MSPs. Specifically in the medical realm is where we're seeing a lot of the bigger ransomware attacks, just even in the last 3 or so months. Like the slide that we're talking about right here. I mean, this is just a couple weeks ago. It's a Milwaukee-based provider. They do virtual stuff for like virtual ERP and other things for nursing homes and other clinics and that type of thing. They got encrypted on the back end, so the actual MSP itself got encrypted, and the ransomware for it was $14 million in Bitcoin, and it was just crazy amount of what they were actually asking. And that's not out of the realm of possibility from what I'm seeing from other companies too. I mean, I know of at least one medical dental MSP a couple months ago in the Midwest. They got hit by another strand of ransomware, and it was like it hit about 500 dentists or something like that. That took weeks and weeks to recover from. Another one that I learned of last week, it was another dental MSP in this case, where they got hit, and it hit about 100 dentists. And the reason that these people are going after MSPs, specifically medical MSPs, is because it's an easy attack vector. I mean, think about it. You have an MSP that has healthcare data that has to be protected, has to be recoverable, or else they get huge fines from HIPAA and everything else. And typically, the small businesses, that dentists or pediatricians or anything that these MSPs are taking care of, aren't the best at keeping up with technology or spending a lot of technology. So it's a really easy target for some of these ransomware attackers. And I don't see that going away anytime soon. There's a lot of things that we can do to help prevent that and put some guards up on that. Gary, if you want to go to the next slide. I call it our data protection secrets, but it shouldn't be a secret. I mean, this stuff, a lot of it is common sense, standardizing your setups, making sure that if you're a partner that has, multiple different locations out there, standardize everything, make sure that it is, if you need to recover that, it's something that you can spin back up very quickly, get things going, and know your setups that are out there. Just standardizing that, locking down things as much as you can, having a specialized backup account that only, that's the only thing that can, target your NAS, or with very limited resources, limited permissions on those type of accounts. Basically, using the least privileged type of scenario to make sure that if for some reason that is breached, that it's very, very minimal impact across the networks. And something that we're actually doing right now, we're not quite done with it, is we're actually creating like a very easy template for either partners, MSPs, or even end users that are worried about this, to create a basically recovery plan template. So when you get hit by ransomware, because it's going to be a when, not an if. What do you do? I mean, what happens if there's a fire? What happens if there's anything else? Having that written down, having a good plan, going through it, making sure that contact information for everyone, what needs to happen on recovery, in what order. That's a huge part of this, and I see this even in some of our larger customers. I had a customer earlier this summer got hit with ransomware. They had about 100 servers or something like that they were backing up, and they really didn't have a great recovery plan taken care of. So it took them weeks to get back up and running. I mean, they were able to get back up and running, but that's one good thing about how they were set up. But it could have been a lot quicker had they actually had a recovery plan in place and set. Gary, if you want to go to the next slide. Part of that recovery plan is, making sure that you have a backup software, making sure that you can recover. and that's kind of why we do this Nova Backup Buffalo bundle. So the Nova Backup software comes for free with the TerraStation NAS devices that Buffalo is selling, and it works really well together. It's very simple to set up. There's multiple types of backups that can be done: file backups, image-based backups. Even our image-based backups will you can convert them into virtual machines through VHDX. So it can be almost like a spare tire type of situation. In case something happens, you have that full image backup of that machine to spin up, along with using our software as Gary said, that 3-2-1 backup rule. We can do local backups. We can do multiple types of local backups. In fact, you can use a TerraStation to replicate to another TerraStation at another location. We have cloud-based options too, both in the TerraStation itself along within the software. So there's lots of different ways that you can use the free software that comes bundled with the Buffalo device to really get a good protection layer on top of this, so you can recover from a ransomware attack. And Gary, I think that's it on my side. If you want to take it back over.
Well, thank you very much, Nathan. So we just had a couple more slides we want to go real quickly. As I mentioned earlier, we do believe we're the market's most secure NAS. Unlike some of our competitors, there's no third-party apps you can install. There's nothing to add to the operating system. We don't try to, we don't try to be all things to all people. The bottom line is the more features that you provide, it's also opening more attack surfaces. So we have a closed operating system. All of our TerraStations, current TerraStations lines support your own built-in encryption. You can encrypt the data at rest. You can encrypt the data on the wire if you're doing replication. Both of those are using 256-bit AES. So that's, as it's government grade or industry grade encryption. We try to do everything in our power to make sure that we're as secure as possible, and we try to give you the tools to make it to do your configurations as secure as possible as well. One of the things, as Nathan mentioned, is that if you are using a TerraStation as a backup, then we recommend that nothing else access the data on the TerraStation, only the backup software. Create an account that is specifically used by the backup software. Most backup softwares, including NovaStore's excellent Nova backup software, has the ability for the software itself to log in as a separate account from whatever user is logged in on the computer or system account or anything like that. You can have a dedicated account that's only used by the backup software, and that's the only account that's allowed to access the data on the TerraStation, the backup target, so that if you do come under attack, then unless somebody mistakenly logs into a system with that backup account, then there's there's very little opportunity for the malware itself to be able to access that. For the most part, malware typically needs to have the rights of whatever user is logged into a computer when it launches. And if you limit those rights, limit access to your backups, then you eliminate one more vector. And these are just a rundown of some of our features. Like I said, it's a closed operating system, secure setup. You don't have to connect to the internet in order to get a TerraStation set up. With many of our competitors, they require that you create a cloud account and connect to their cloud in order to complete the setup of the NAS. We don't require that. We don't require that the TerraStation be connected to have internet access at all in order to go through the setup. Like I said, built-in encryption. You can use either local or Active Directory domain users for all your access controls. And we can do backup and replication from TerraStation to TerraStation, have the data encrypted at rest and on the wire. And of course, as we were talking about, our new Snapshot feature on the TS6000 will also help you with recovery in the event that you do get a problem.
Thank you, Gary.
And now we're going to pass it back over to David.
Thank you. So our TerraStation 5010 series and 6000 series are the bulk of what we sell to our partners and our customers. Some of the use cases that folks are using is client backups, backup servers, a place to store data when migrating over to a new server, a part of a disaster recovery solution. As Gary mentioned, replication, you could have multiple devices, one device backing up to another, or multiple devices backing up to or replicating to a single large one, on-site or off-site. You've got storage virtualization and surveillance solutions. And then we also have cloud integration. So if any of these are sparking your interest, please contact us. I'll provide my contact info in the next couple of slides. And then the new features with the 6000 is the Snapshot and then iSCSI backup, which we are happy to talk to you a little bit more. We are very proud of our tech support. For the past 3 years, along with our partner program, we've won the CRN annual report card for this program, voted on by our partners, by many of the folks on this webinar. We take that very seriously, and we do our best to try to help our customers and our partners whenever we can. So all of our support is US-based. It's in San Antonio. Gary Thomas here, he actually trains all of the tech support team. So you guys are in award-winning hands. It's 24/7. So you could call, any time of the day, and we have people manning the phones to support you. And then we also invest heavily in our knowledge base to try to create as much of a self-service opportunity for you to support your customers or your business as well. Buffalo, we build purpose-built SMB storage. So they're really designed for small to medium-sized businesses and even at the enterprise level in the right scenario. Ease of use. Our network storage devices come with hard drives included. One of the questions I saw is what some of the differences. We include the hard drives. So you don't need to know the flavor of the month hard drive, which is the best hard drive, because our team in Japan is analyzing all of the hardware data that they can get their hands on, and we make sure that we put the best hard drives in our products. We warranty those, right? So it's our dime if they fail. And we also do the RAID configuration at the factory, so you don't need to take precious time to get that set up, among other things. We talked about support, and then we also are as competitively priced as we are able to be. So if you look at our solution, we believe that we've got the right price point for you and your customers. Contact information. So reach out to myself, reach out to Nathan. We're here to support you. If you want any of those use cases that you may have that you want to take a deeper dive into, reach out to me. We'll set up a call with Gary, and we'll go into detail. Now, in terms of some of the questions that we've gotten, let me pull that up real quick. Okay, so the first question is, what protects the previous snapshots from being encrypted?
Well, I want to talk about that. I don't want to dive too deep into the technical aspects of how the snapshots function. But basically, when you take a snapshot, it utilizes the ability of the system to do what we call a copy on write. So anytime a change is made to the data in the main share, then if you have a snapshot of that data, the original data gets copied over to a hidden snapshot field. That's just that area, that storage area is only accessible by the core system, unless you mount that snapshot specifically and access it directly. then it doesn't have nothing can access it outside of the terror station itself. So it is protected.
Next question is a two-part question. One is, how much is the snapshot feature, and how do I use the snapshot? So first and foremost, there are no recurring costs. So the feature is included with your terror station purchase. So if you look at that that onion that Nathan was talking about and Gary was presenting on, out of your entire ransomware solution strategy, this has the potential of being the least expensive because we don't have a recurring fee. In terms of utilizing the snapshot, I'll turn that over to Gary to address.
It's just a matter of going in and setting up snapshotting for a specific, either a file share or an iSCSI target. We can snapshot either one of those, and then it's just a matter of setting up the schedule. It's we'll have we do have KB articles on our website explaining exactly how to go about setting it up, how to setting up schedules, how to set up the snapshots, how to access a snapshot if you need to, and how to roll back a snapshot in the event that you need to do that as well. So.
Next question. You guys are a chatty bunch here. Thank you. We've got how much room on the terror station NAS will the snapshot take up?
Well, that's a trick question because we can't predict that. So the way, like I said, the way snapshots work is a copy on write. So when a write occurs to the to whatever it is that you have a snapshot of, then the original data gets copied to a snapshot holding area. Well, the simple fact is that the more your data changes, the more writes occur, then the more of the original data gets copied over to a snapshot, the hidden snapshot area. So if you have, let's say you've got a terror station that has 10 terabytes of usable space, all right, and you've got an 8 terabytes worth of data that you're storing on it. If that data starts changing a bunch, then you're going to run out of that storage space, because the more changes you make, then the more space is required for the snapshot data. And that's one of the things about ransomware, is it's going to try to encrypt everything. So if the system runs out of space before it can encrypt everything, it gets unable to write error, a device full error, and it can't go on. It'll stop that in its tracks simply because there's no more space. So people ask, well, then how much space do I buy? Well, it's, again, difficult to predict because it depends on your usage patterns. A general rule of thumb is usually about a 50% increase. So if you have 4 terabytes of data you need to store, then we'd probably recommend you have at least 6 terabytes of usable space total on your terror station in order to accommodate that snapshot functionality. For most people, in most use cases, that will deal with it. If your use case or your data usage patterns are very heavy, then you might need more. It's really dependent on what type of data and how often the data changes to how much space you'll need.
So Gary, is it safe to say that there is no right answer?
There is no right answer. It's not a one size fits all answer for sure.
Got it.
And Gary, I want to chime in a little bit because I know a little bit about the snapshot technology. It also depends on how many snapshots you keep too, right?
Exactly. Yes, absolutely, yeah. Nathan. So if I want to keep, if I have 4 terabytes of data, and and my data changes fairly frequently, so that I have, wind up with 500 or 600 gigabytes for a snapshot, but I want to keep, a bunch of snapshots, then I need a lot more space. I want to be able to keep 20 or 30 or 40 snapshots over the course of a few months, then I'm going to need a lot of space in order to store those snapshots because I'm keeping multiple different versions of the same data.
Next question, will this deck be available for download? Yes. This deck will be, the presentation, there will be a recording of it that will be made available. If we need to do, if you want to share that with your team, you are welcome to. Or if you want to do a training with Gary and myself, we are happy to go into it in detail with your team.
So we will try to get a recording of this webinar posted to our YouTube channel over the next, hopefully it should be done by the end of this week, for sure. but hopefully we can get it in the next day or so.
Okay, and then should the backup device be disconnected from your network to protect against intrusive ransomware?
Well, I'm not sure I fully understand the question. If you're in the middle of an attack and you're aware that an attack is occurring, obviously disconnecting as many things from your network as possible during that time is always a best bet. Maybe even to the point of just unplugging switches completely so that nothing can talk to each other to try to preserve as much as you can. Really, if the question is, should I, have the NAS disconnected from the network all the time and only hook it up when using it? Well, that may get a little too complicated for most people. But we do recommend that you limit access, obviously, to as much as possible. One of the basic tenets of any network security is you limit everyone's access. Give any user only the access that they absolutely require in order to fulfill, in order to do whatever it is that their job function is. So.
Okay, a couple more questions. Is there any validation beyond a successful backup/snapshot for the data before recovery is ran?
So for a snapshot, there's not. There's no kind of validation sent on a snapshot. Nathan, I'll let you address the question as far as the backup software goes. I'm sure that Nova Storage software can do that, though.
Yeah. So there's multiple different answers on this. So normal file and folder level backup. When you do a backup, it's actually going to do a verification of all the files too. So it does a CRC checksum on every file that's been backed up and checks it at the end of a backup to make sure that everything that we selected for backup and said we backed up is actually there. And then when you do a recovery, you can one of the things that we highly recommend is testing your restores. If you're not testing your restores, you don't have any backups because you don't know if those backups are good. It's one of those things that we preach here is, even though you have backups, you need to make sure that you test those restores and make sure that you can actually recover from that, even though the data says it's good. Another thing that we do, especially with the new image backup functionality with putting the image directly to a VHDX, is if you're doing that image backup to say like a VHDX, you can mount that backup directly within Windows just to confirm that, hey, this backup is good. You can even do test restores of like grabbing that entire file, bringing it over to like a Windows 10 box or a server box that has Hyper-V on it, or in some cases the Windows storage server TerraStations that Buffalo has, and bringing that VHDX up as a Hyper-V VM to confirm, hey, this backup's good. I can turn on this machine. Everything's there as a good check and validation that, hey, I'm okay to recover if something does happen. Okay, our final question, and if we did not get to your question, please reach out to us and we will be happy to talk to you offline about it. The final question is, can we retrofit a prior model with the Snapshot feature, specifically the 51210?
And the answer to that, unfortunately, is going to be no. And the biggest reason there is that the Snapshot feature itself requires incorporating a different file system on the underlying system. So in order to enable that would basically require reformatting all of the drives in the system and installing basically a new version of the TerraStation OS. So right now, the only systems that'll ship that'll have this Snapshot capability is the TS6000. I know that right now the TS6000 is fairly limited in terms of what capacities are available, but we'll be expanding that very soon in the near future as well. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Nathan, and thank you to all of our participants on today's call. The webinar, we greatly appreciate your time, and we will conduct the raffle offline. We want to get you guys back to work, so thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.